Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine. Thank you for joining me today to go through the Building Connections workshop for the Student Counseling Center at the University of Tennessee. So I want to begin this presentation by highlighting that COVID-19 has severely impacted the way that individuals interact with one another, especially within higher education. And so many, if not all of your classes may be online, which makes it very difficult for you to meet others or engage in more casual social connections than you might have had in previous years. And so this presentation is really focused on how do we combat those barriers that COVID-19 has put up, and how do we continue to make social connections and interactions. So some questions to consider during this presentation are: what is important to you in a friend? What are you looking for in a friend? How do you typically make new friends? What are some methods that you have used in the past, if you can recall? And what kinds of activities are you interested in? And how that last question plays in, we'll get into a little bit more later, but these are just some questions to consider while we go through the workshop. So it's important to highlight that humans are naturally very social beings, and the way that individuals engage in social interactions can differ. One way in which people can differ is whether or not they are introverted or extroverted. And so introverts are typically those who spend more time in their head with their private thoughts, maybe spend more time alone than others, receive important social interactions in different ways that those who are extroverted are. Extroverts tend to spend more time focused on their external environment, speaking to other people, talking to other people, being around other people, activities that may lead an introverted person to feel a little bit more socially drained at the end of the day. Could be activities that cause extroverts to be a little bit more socially charged. Regardless of whether someone leans more introverted or extroverted or a combination of the two, there's still some common traits that are shared by both. And so, for example, they might be shy or lack confidence in social situations, regardless of their introverted or extroverted, or they might excel in certain types of social situations. So this kind of highlights that it's a little bit more about situations specifically than it is about general personality traits. So that's important to keep in mind, that not everyone fits one or the other of these molds, and people can be both at different points in time. Okay, so for connection versus isolation, it's really important to note that meaningful connections lead to a lot of important outcomes. So it can lead to a better adjustment experience. So if you think about your adjustment to college or your adjustment to UT specifically, you might recall it having more meaningful connections, maybe with roommates or friends who also decided to come to UT, people that you met early on in your time here, if you're an upper level student. Can really change the way that you adjust to this environment and your experience here. It also tends to lead to more enjoyment and curiosity in a new environment. And so it might be that, you know, if you have friends that came here and you already have a social circle semi-established upon your arrival, maybe you're a little bit more willing to engage in some events that are around campus that you wouldn't go to if you had to go to alone. There could be advantages in professional development as well. And so having meaningful connections when you consider mentorship and advisors, this could be something that helps you reach potential career goals. And finally, meaningful connections are linked to better well-being and a better sense of belonging while you're on campus, as well as in other aspects of your life. When you think about when you think about social isolation, then you can kind of see how this would lead to depression symptoms. And so a lack of motivation, maybe not feeling particularly interested in activities you used to appreciate engaging in. It could lead to anxiety. And so thought processes revolving around potential social interactions or maybe the after effects after a social interaction. And it could also lead to a lack of motivation. Social isolation could also lead to academic distress. And so it might mean that without meaningful connections on campus, maybe you're not as interested in your academics as you would be if you were taking in-person classes and had the chance to engage with others face-to-face in a more personal manner. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and pause. Since you're doing this workshop independently, this would be where you would open this link provided and take a couple minutes to watch the video. So I will pause now and you can watch the video and then we'll return. All right, everyone, I am assuming that you took time to watch the video and are playing this recording again. And so from the video, I would really like you to think about what are some helpful tips and tricks that you received from this video. Did you think that it was helpful for you? Do you think that you can use this video to help you make friends and build connections while you're at UT? I also want you to think about if there's things that did not work for you. And so one thing I would like to keep in mind is that obviously this video was filmed prior to COVID-19, and I want to encourage you to only engage in in-person social activities if you feel comfortable engaging in those, and also maintain social distancing, make sure to wear your mask, and always wash your hands. Just a fun little plug for health there. All right, so what are some things that can impact social exchanges and your connections with other people? One thing that's important to keep in mind is cultures. And so each individual has several different types of cultures depending on identities that they hold. So for example, if an individual is of a certain religion, there's cultures associated with each religion and the way that you practice religion, maybe beliefs that you have, traditions. In regards to those religions, it goes the same for gender identity, for sexual orientation, for race, race identity, for ethnicity. And as you can see, it's kind of any identity that you hold, how there's specific cultures that go with that identity. So it's important to recognize that your social connections and what you seek for in terms of social engagements are going to be related to the cultural identities that you hold and the intersections of those identities. Some other things that might impact the way you view social interactions could be family dynamics. And so how you were brought up or how you were raised to engage with others, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what you seek comfort in. Previous or current friendships, and so ways that you might like to relate to friends. This kind of goes back to those first questions I had at the very beginning of the PowerPoint. So these ideas of how have you made friendships before? How are you making friendships now? Are they similar? Are they different? The environment in which you make your friends, what you and your friends typically do together, and how that could influence new friendships that you have. Previous relationships, and so different ways that you connect with other people outside of family and outside of friendships could impact the way that you view social engagements and social connections. When you consider extracurricular activities, so in the video, this is similar to the example of painting, and so when she goes to her painting class, she meets a new friend. It's this idea that maybe interacting in activities that you are interested in and maybe somebody else is interested in too could lead to a natural or occurring friendship or a social connection. Something else that might lead to social interactions could be work and or educational goals. And so considering that you all are in college right now, you're working towards a specific career goal, specific major goal. And a lot of times you'll notice that you'll take several classes with individuals who have the same goals in mind and have the same plans in life. And so sometimes that can lead to developing natural working friendships where you are networking, but also interacting in a social manner. Health and ability status could also be something that influences the way that you engage with others and who you seek engagements and exchanges with. And finally, we'll consider social media, and we'll get into that a little bit more later in the presentation, but basically just keeping in mind that information that you receive from social media, TV, newspapers, commercials, internet communities in general can influence the way that you perceive the world and your worldviews, and can in turn influence the way you interact with other people. So I wanted to have a specific slide dedicated to online communities. Again, in the age of COVID, a lot of times people are interacting with others in a virtual format. And so it's a little less of this in-person contact that we have become accustomed to in terms of human beings on this earth. And so something that's beneficial when you consider online communities is that social support can occur on online settings. And so if you think about Facebook groups, if you think about Twitter, Instagram, Reddit subgroups, there's lots of different ways where you can find communities and find individuals who hold similar interests and beliefs as you do. Oftentimes, this can connect folks with communities they might not have in-person access to. And so when you consider COVID, this might mean that virtual interactions are safer and they're more feasible to do. It might also be helpful to recognize that Knoxville, while it is a city, is not the biggest city in the world. So you're not always going to find the communities that you're looking for that hold all the identities that you're looking to have intersect and be present in social connections and social communities. So a lot of times you can find those connections on online communities, even though you might not be able to find them in person. Okay, so what about UT and what they offer? So I listed a couple different options here for where you can go to find information about student organizations and campus organizations here at UT. And so Multicultural Student Life has a list of student organizations that are currently active at UT, split by a lot of different variables. And so you can kind of go and look up some different identities that you might have or different groups who are looking at things that you're interested in and find some activities that they're hosting. There's also the rec center, and so you could consider intramural team sports or maybe physical activities if they have certain types of athletic classes. So maybe you really like yoga, you might go find a yoga class. Again, with the rec center, that's going to be stuff that's probably primarily in person. So you're going to have to assess how comfortable you are with engaging in in-person activities prior to using this as an example for creating social connections. There's a couple different building locations on campus that could be helpful. And so there's the International House, which hosts many different types of events for international students and domestic students. And so these events are virtual and in person. And so there's some that you can find and interact with others in ways that you might not have anticipated. There's also the Black Frisian Cultural Center, which again is a physical space on campus. They host a lot of different types of events and different types of community gatherings, and so that could be something that you're interested in. The Student Union is also a physical location on campus that events are sometimes held. I also listed the Student Union because a lot of times they have flyerings for upcoming events, and that could be something that you use to locate specific activities that maybe you're interested in. So maybe a specific speaker is coming, maybe they're hosting some type of class. Just a variety of activities are typically posted on the Student Union. If you're not comfortable going in person, I recommend checking out the University of Tennessee's calendar of events. And so they typically list any organization event that's happening on campus. It's not an exhaustive list. I don't know if every single organization on campus posts their activities to the calendar, but it could be a good start if you're thinking of things that you're interested in and you want to check out some activities. That could be a good place to poke around and see what's coming up on campus throughout the week, and maybe you find something that you're interested in. One thing that I would like to highlight is practicing the importance of narratives and holding your stories. And so when you're considering learning other people's narratives upon meeting them, or maybe after you've even known them a while, it's important to engage in active listening. And so you want to show them that you care about them, that you care about their story. It's better to ask open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. You get a lot more information about a person by asking open-ended questions, and it leads to a more conducive conversation versus closed-ended questions. You want to make sure to listen without judgment. So as we talked before, people have lots of different cultures associated with their identities and their experiences. And just because you haven't had those identities and experiences doesn't mean you can judge someone else for theirs. And finally, it's okay to ask questions for clarification or for understanding. And so a lot of times people want to be heard and they want to know that you're understanding what they're saying. And so asking questions can be helpful. In regards to sharing your narrative, you want to make sure that it's safe communications. And so you're only going to want to share your narrative with people you're comfortable sharing your narrative to. The story is yours, and so you're not required to disclose it to anybody you don't want to. Not every single social connection requires you to disclose your life story if you don't choose to. You want to make sure that you're open to providing context if you so choose. And so sometimes giving a little bit more information might help somebody understand your perspectives and where you're coming from. So again, this can kind of play into the overlapping identities. And again, your story is yours, so you don't ever have to edit it for anybody else. You don't have to make it more digestible for somebody else. It is your narrative, and so you are able to tell it in as much detail or as abbreviated as you wish. So on this page, I have included some resources for you. Meetup.com is an app that typically lists various activities or groups happening and kind of separates it by things that you might be interested in. And so that app could be helpful for you to locate community-based activities. And again, those might be in person, those might be virtual. You could check out this Center for Student Engagement, this bowl link here. There's also some volunteering links. a friendship program that's hosted through the International House, which is one of the physical spaces we talked about earlier in the presentation. And you could also consider the University of Tennessee's Student Counseling Center. And so this center it's on the second floor of the Student Health Building. Currently, most of the services are virtual at this point in time, but you could attend the Student Counseling Center for individual sessions or group counseling sessions. And so there's several support groups that are available through the university's Student Counseling Center, and that might be helpful for you to interact with some folks and make some friends that way as well. So I want to thank you all very much for attending this talk. Please use the resources available and reach out to the Student Counseling Center if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.